Hey everyone, I am back. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. I hope that you've had a very wonderful week. For those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, welcome. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. For those of you who tune in every single Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, welcome back. And for those of you who are watching the replay on YouTube, welcome. Be sure to subscribe, Dr. Nekeshia Hammond YouTube page if you ever miss a live mental health moment. And thanks for those who are starting to join here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. Good evening from Charlotte, North Carolina is in the house. Welcome, welcome. Let me know where you're tuning in from today. Today I am in Illinois. So as you all know, last week I was in Puerto Rico. I had my sunshine again and some warm weather and some beach weather, and now back to the cold, but it's not too cold, so I can manage. But I am in Illinois today, slightly cooler than Florida where I reside. But let me know where you're tuning in from in the chat here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. Again, hope you've had a really great week. For those of you who are new to Mental Health Moment, every first Tuesday of the month is specifically devoted to children's mental health, because as you know, there's been so much that's happened, especially over the last couple of years, to our kids and just so many disruptions and so many things that's been happening. So every first Tuesday of the month is specifically devoted to children's mental health. So whether you're a parent, grandparent, you work with kids, you know someone who has kids, be sure to take this information, share it with your loved ones or people that you really care about, right? Or you can use this information for yourself. But thanks again for those who are starting to join here. Let's see, Bay Area, California's in the house. Welcome. Ashburn, Virginia, Zephyr Hills, Florida, Athens, Ohio, Akron, Ohio. We got a lot of Ohios in the house today. Greensboro, North Carolina, Baltimore. Good evening from Chicago. Welcome. Philadelphia, Louisiana, San Antonio. Welcome. Another person from Chicago. Welcome. And good evening from Norfolk, Virginia as well. I will actually be in Hampton, Virginia in the next couple of days here. So some of you may already know, but on this Saturday, actually April 8th, I will be speaking at the National Child Development Institute Hampton Roads fundraising gala. I'm super excited about it, really about where we're at when it comes to children's mental health, specifically Black youth, Black children's mental health. Where are we at? What can we do? How can we be more impactful as a community? So I'm super excited to be speaking there. drnekeshiahammond.com. For those of you who are new, always has my up-to-date speaking events coming up through different places in the country. For that event, though, it is sold out. So if you hadn't gotten your tickets already, it's actually sold out, which I'm excited, of course, for the organization and for this fundraiser for it to be sold out to raise money, of course, for a really great cause. But for those of you, again, that are in the Virginia area that didn't get your tickets yet, it's all good. I'll be speaking in other different places in the country. And of course, I'll always, the drnekeshiahammond.com website will be updated with that information. So you can always check that out. But Queens, New York is in the house as well. Frederick, Maryland's in the house. Las Vegas, Chicago. Someone says, I'm in Hampton. Oh man. Yes. So, and Brazil's in the house. Welcome. Yeah. So that event, as I mentioned, is sold out. However, who knows, maybe I'll be in Virginia again sometime soon. The next event I will be at will be in May 12th, actually. And again, I'll update that one pretty soon on the drnekeshiahammond.com website. That one will be in Tampa, but I'll put that on there soon. But again, thanks for those who are starting to tune in here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. Again, the first Tuesday of every month is specifically devoted to children's mental health. So what I want to share with you today is really 2 quick tips when we think about children's mental health. One of the things that is so concerning always, and I'll speak specifically today about Black children's mental health, because that's what I'll be speaking on this Saturday here at this fundraising gala. One One of the things that's very concerning that I see time and time again, I've had personal experience with it, professional experience with it. We see it in the media constantly is how we are telling kids as a society that they are not enough. I mean, I feel like every week there's a new version of children are not enough, especially Black children are not enough, who they are, what they're doing, um, all their actions. Like them starting to feel like they are not enough, which is very concerning. So even for those of you who may have watched the NCAA championship game, the women's version of it, you probably saw it already went viral, where Angel Reese, one of the players on LSU, just got complete disrespect and a lot of criticism for doing different gestures and things like that in a basketball game. It totally went viral. And for you all, for those of you who ever watched any form of sports, people talk trash. That's just what happens. However, as we know, there is a stigma when it comes to women, when it comes to sports, when it comes to her being Black, all these sorts of things. So she really spoke out. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's all over social media. Even if you didn't watch the game, it's all over social media. But very concerning. And I bring this up today because this is the type of thing that constantly, especially again for Black children, that they are constantly going through. A lot of criticism about what they look like, what they wear, what they say, what not to say, and the list goes on. And this actually is very, very detrimental to the mental health of children. I was just reading today an article, very concerning, but not anything surprising with just seeing some of the research trends. And it was showing that boys of color actually get in trouble more 5 times as much as their white counterparts, right? So meaning the suspensions and the referrals and getting into trouble and getting expulsions and all these things that are happening for our younger, even our younger kids in school are happening due to racism, due to prejudice, discrimination, due to the biases that happen, right, for little Black children, not just boys, girls too, but the study was about boys. So again, one of the tips I want to leave you with today. So these are all things that are very heavy when it comes to children and mental health. Is that we have to create safe spaces. And what I mean by that is not every environment is safe, if you will. So depending on different children, their schools, and I don't just mean physically safe, which of course that's a whole other issue, but there may not be physical safety either, but also even if a school is physically safe, sometimes there's a lot of kids right now where they're not emotionally safe. They don't feel mentally, emotionally safe, which is draining. So whether that environment is their home, that's not a good environment for them. It's not a nurturing environment for them, a place where they can thrive, whether that's school, whether that's in the community, whether that's them hearing all of the things on social media that's so negative towards Black people and Black children. All of that combined is so stressful, you all, that I really urge you as a community, which is what I'll be talking about this Saturday for those of you who can't make the talk, but I really urge you as a community to think about how can we create these safe spaces then. And it may look like therapy or not, because the research shows that there are so many children who are not receiving the therapy they need. When it comes to children, when it comes to Black children in particular, that's a whole other level of stigma when it comes to mental health treatment. There's a whole other level of issues with funding, with issues with health insurance. The list goes on and on, right? So I'm hopeful that in certain spaces that it can be a mental health professional, but in a lot of spaces it's not. And it means that we as a community have to step up, if you will. We have to really think about how can we create these safe spaces? How can we create these conversations to encourage our youth? How can we create these conversations to make sure that these kids feel like they're enough? Because I promise you, and again, as I mentioned before, this is something personally I've experienced growing up as a little Black girl, where a lot of people told me there was a lot of things I couldn't do and what I shouldn't do, and just all these sorts of criticism just because of the way I looked, which is pretty insane for kids, especially to comprehend that. So how do we create these safe spaces, right? How do we have these conversations? It absolutely starts with a shift that we have to have in all of our mindsets as a community. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. If you want to be an ally, if you do happen to fit the criteria, if you will, as a Black person or not, it everyone has a responsibility. Everyone has an opportunity to be helping children, right? Everyone has an opportunity, again, specifically today on today's mental health moment, because that's what I'll be speaking about again on Saturday as well. We're talking about Black youth today and how this is a huge crisis right now. There's a lot of organizations, thankfully, there's a lot of task force that are being developed, a lot of organizations that are really working on this issue. So I do want you to know that. But along with that, we also need community support, right? Um, all good. Someone said, San Antonio, Texas, I logged in late. All good. You can log in anytime. You're right on time. It's all good. Cleveland's in the house as well. Someone said, I watched the whole tournament. So you already know. Someone said, I have a great son I'm raising. He wants to get an apartment on his own. On his own, he works. What do you think? What do I think about that? So, well, I've never met your son, so I'm not sure specifically, but what I will say, depending on, of course, age and maturity and how you feel about it, definitely a sit-down conversation and a heart-to-heart conversation about that, whether or not a child or when a child is ready, if you will. There's a lot of things that have to be put into place, right, for a child to be ready and get their own place and that sort of thing, as far as emotional maturity, mentally, are they capable? And even if they are, knowing that you're still there for them, right? Just because they don't live in the same household as you, how are you going to be there for them and still supportive of them? So yeah, great question. Someone said, good evening from New York. Welcome. Where can I view or participate in Saturday's conversation? So unfortunately, for Saturday, and all the information is always on my website, drnekeshiahammond.com. I will be checking with the coordinator. If certain events that I do, sometimes I put certain clips out. So I usually put it on my social media, which you can always see, drnekeshiahammond.com. So I'm going to check with that coordinator, though, just to see, because obviously it's a paid event for people to attend, but I might be able to do some highlight clips and definitely put it on social media concerning that event. But unfortunately, the tickets, as I mentioned, are sold out at this time for that gala. But I'll always be posting other events that I'll be speaking out throughout the year. So you can always check out my website and look at the events tab and you can see all the information. But thanks for asking. And for the person that said they watched the whole tournament, going back to the person that said they watched the whole tournament, the thing was, so as you clearly see, well, we know for a fact that some of the backlash and some of the criticism or whatnot is simply due to the way that this person looked because of her gender, because of her race, ethnicity, all these sorts of things. Because again, if any of you have watched any sports ever in your life, on many different sport outlets, that's just a part of the game. I used to play basketball myself, not in college, but in middle school and part of high school. And that is always what it's been. It's every sport you can watch on TV, whether you played it or not. People talk trash, right? That's a part of the game. So again, it's just, all of that was happening. But again, I'm really glad that, I think she's 20 years old, I believe. She's pretty young, right? This is a college student. And thankfully, though, she really stood up, just reminding people that she's going to be who she is. And I thought that was a good message that she shared, because again, when we think about mental health for our kids are always watching. I always say that they're always watching. They know what's going on. I have a 10-year-old son, and it's always surprising sometimes, because again, they have these tablets and they have these ways to see things on the internet, and they see headlines. And my son, he was actually watching the whole game. He's very into basketball himself, and just again, seeing these role models, hopefully, of how it's okay to be who you are. But that's a message that I hope that you share again with the children in your own life. Maybe someone with a child, maybe you're working with children, is to constantly be telling them that they are enough in who they are, because society was always going to be telling them that they're not. And it's a real struggle. I can't tell you how many articles I've been reading lately. It's disheartening as a psychologist to constantly be reading them, honestly. But however, there's still a lot of hope. And the articles just just constantly mentioning the mental health crisis with youth, constantly mentioning how much our kids are struggling right now, especially after COVID-19 pandemic. There's a lot of things that happened, you all, that many of us are still dealing with the consequences of, whether it was moving, whether it was loss of a job, whether it was changing jobs, whether it was some type of disruption, whether it was loss, whether it's grief. There's so many things that were happening in 2020 and then dealing with it in 2021. And yes, we're in 2023, but there's some things that we're still emotionally dealing with. And so are kids, right? So are kids. So let's just definitely remember that there. Yep. Someone said Angel versus Caitlin. Yep, that was absolutely what was definitely happening. Let's see. Someone says, I know I may get some backlash, but what about when the parent doesn't feel like they have an emotional safe space around their children, doing all things to encourage and uplift and support, but still being made to feel like they are a bad parent by the actions of their child, feeling like they're walking on eggshells in the home? Yep, that's a really, really great question. And so part one is definitely creating these safe spaces for our children and our youth, right? But the second part of that is really, as you mentioned it, is to also remember that we have to be taking care of ourselves, right? Whether or not you're a parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, someone with a child, whomever you are watching this right now, we have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves as well, which I will say, to your point, is sometimes really difficult. If you are able to think about what resources in my area do I have to heal this relationship. Sometimes it's a parent-child relationship that needs to be healed. Sometimes things have happened. Sometimes traumatic things have happened. Sometimes things are said that we're like, oops, we didn't mean to say that, right? Like a lot of things start to happen. A lot of hurt, a lot of resentment, a lot of disappointment happens, which is normal in a parent-child relationship. So sometimes though, we always talk about mental health moment about how we're all on our healing journey, but sometimes we're on healing journeys with our children, right? Or with our parents. So that is definitely something I would recommend. How can you also, as a parent, be supported? Who is supporting you, right? So it's important that we think about how to best support our youth, and it's important that we think about how can we create these safe spaces, but also where's your safe space as well, right? Making sure that that's created for you, and making sure to work on the healing journey for that parent-child relationship, if that's something that needs to happen, which can happen through therapy if needed, which can happen through different places of worship, which can happen through interventions with friends and family. There's different levels, there's different types of conflicts, but just really thinking about assessing, okay, what do I need? What am I able to do? And starting to take action in those areas. But really, really great question. So someone said, God bless her soul for being honest and believing in herself and the team. Absolutely. Yep. Someone said that their son is 24 years old and has some behavior that indicates he could be on the autism spectrum. I spoke to his pediatrician, gave a form to his teacher to fill out, and it came back normal. My son needs to be evaluated, but I think you're saying it needs to be evaluated with another evaluation. I think that's what you're saying. Great question. So when it comes to psychological evaluations for children, so sometimes there may be children in your life that are struggling emotionally, mentally, or whatnot, and you're like, I don't know where to start. I'm not sure what's going on. Do they have ADHD? Do they have depression? Do they have anxiety? What is going on with them? One of the things that's really important is to go to a pediatrician to make sure physically everything is good with them, because sometimes kids have issues with low blood sugar, or thyroid issues, or anemia, or all sorts of physical health things that look like depression, look like anxiety, look like attention issues. So that's step one. The second thing is, if you're able to, there's a lot of different resources in the community, but psychological testing for some kids is really important to see, to your point, does this child have autism, or is it ADHD, or is it a social issue, or depression, or anxiety? There's all sorts of things that look like one another in the field of mental health, which is why it's so critically important to think about psychological testing. If you're in the US, you can go to American Psychological Association. So it's P as in Paul, A.org, apa.org. You can find a psychologist on there who specializes in psychological testing. If you're outside of the US watching this, you can also look at, you can Google your city or your area and look at a psychological association. There's usually a lot throughout the world, international organizations when it comes to psychological associations, and reach out to them and say, hey, I need this psychological testing. Who would you recommend? Or sometimes your pediatrician can recommend someone as well. But definitely taking that step if needed to look at what could be happening with this child, because I can tell you as a psychologist that's been in this field working with children since 2009 and my private practice, there's a lot of kids who people just wrongly label because we see things and we not viciously, but we see things and we're like, oh, like a teacher might be like, oh, they have ADHD just because they're getting out of their seat and they have problems paying attention. But that doesn't always mean it's ADHD, right? It could be depression, it could be anxiety, it could be trauma, it could be all sorts of things. It could be a learning issue. There's a lot of different things, which is why psychological testing helps to rule those things out. So great question. No problem. Good evening from Florida. Welcome. Yep. Someone said that's what I'm doing now, taking care of me, raising 5 kids, 6 grandkids, and now to great grandkids, 82 years old and good health for my age. Congratulations. I love to hear that. That's beautiful. That's a lot. That's a lot of kids. That's a lot of great kids. Now you got a great grandkid. Good for you. And kudos to you at 82 years young that you are taking care of yourself as well. It's never too late to work on taking care of you. I know today is about the kids because it's the first of the month and we're talking about children's mental health. However, I also want to remind you all to take care of yourselves so that you can show up to be the best version of who you are for you and also for those around you, your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids in this case, right? Or family, friends, or whomever it is. So important. It's never, ever too late to change. If you are like, Dr. Hammond, I am so busy, or I'm struggling financially, or I'm struggling mentally, or I'm struggling in whatever area, and I don't have time for that self-care stuff, I promise you, you do when you make the commitment, because I always share this transparently. I really horribly used to be, or strongly used to be not good at self-care at all. Um, but just really thinking about making a commitment and changing my life and focusing on me and focusing on self-care so I can show up as the best version of who I am when I'm traveling to speak to different groups, when I'm in my practice as a wife, as a mom, all the roles that I play, right? All the things that we do that can be overwhelming, right? You might be taking care of a parent or taking care of a child, grandchild, or whatever it is. It can be overwhelming, right? So we have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves as well. So good for you, and kudos to that 82-year-old watching today, and thanks for sharing that. Someone said, I'm not sure how to agree to disagree about how to create safe spaces when parents are not on the same page. Ooh, very, very, very tricky. That is super tricky. Not always easy when it comes to co-parenting and creating the safe spaces, provided that there is physically, very important, physically safe spaces that this child may be in, making sure that you do the best that you can to create a safe space emotionally and mentally for this child is really important. Now, how another person decides to parent, whether or not they're in the same household as you, may be different. And you may not agree with it, but provided the child is safe, as in, not being abused and that sort of thing, then it's just really important that you do your part as well. And even having those hard conversations sometimes, and it really depends on the age of the child, of course, but having those hard conversations with your co-parent about how the goal for most parents is we want our children to thrive, right? So how can we agree on some of the things that would be more nurturing for this child to thrive? So great question. Thank you. You're welcome. Let's see. I work really hard teaching young children social skills, helping them to frame their emotions and trying to help them build resilience. Very, very important. I wrote a whole book about it, you all. Very important. Teaching kids how to deal with their emotions. Like if I had to sum up my whole career about what do we do to save kids, it's teaching them how to deal with their emotions, right? Because these are skill like it's a gift to teach these skills early because these are things that we need throughout our whole entire life, right? We as adults, we get stressed out, right? It's normal. We get overwhelmed, we get stressed out. We have to learn how to manage our emotions. Is it always easy? No, not at all, right? But we have to learn that, whether it's a work situation, whether it's a friend, family situation, whether it's our personal life, professional lives, whatever part of our life we're dealing with, there's a lot of things that come up. There's a lot of unexpected things. Life happens, and we have to learn how to deal with our emotions. So why not teach children, especially I always say start with the preschoolers, why not teach them early, right? How do you deal age appropriately? How do you deal with those emotions? How do you deal with being angry? You're so angry, I just want to hit my friend. No, you can't, right? You shouldn't do that. So what do you do instead? How do they deal with those emotions? Or you're so excited, you're so happy. You just want to hug everybody in the classroom. Well, we can't do that, right? There's boundaries. Or you're so sad, or you're so nervous, or whatever those emotions are. Teaching kids early is an absolute gift that we can give to them. And again, so remembering today, you all, yes, teaching kids about how to manage their emotions, also creating safe spaces for children is so critically important. And lastly, remembering that we have to show kids and remind kids often that they are enough, who they are, especially when it comes to our Black youth, to all kids, yes, but today's mental health moment is specifically for Black youth mental health, because the data is just it's a lot. It's very heavy. It's a lot. There's definitely a crisis happening when it comes to suicidal rates, when it comes to the depression, when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to a lot of different features. So I want to strongly encourage you to think about, how can I pour in positivity? How can I encourage youth? How can I tell them that, literally tell them they are again, as I mentioned to you all before, I have a 10-year-old son myself. He's in 5th grade. Next year, I'll be crying because he'll be in 6th. As a psychologist, what 6th grade looks like. There's just a lot of changes. It's middle school, right? There's a lot of things happening. But one of the things I've done ever since he was a little boy, and I continue to do it, is I tell him just whatever it is about him, I try my best to really pour into him. So whether it's his physical features, letting him know, I think he's beautiful. Your hair is beautiful. Your nose is beautiful. Your skin is beautiful. Physically, you're beautiful, right? Just saying those things to him. Emotionally, telling him things about his personality that I love about him. He's a really kind kid. I tell him often, like, I love how kind you are. You're amazingly kind. He's athletic. I tell him, the good features about him, like you're so good in basketball, you're athletic, you're smart, all these sorts of things. Just saying, pouring into the positivity, saying the things that I know society is going to say is not true. And I've told him that before. I'm like, you're going to get into middle school and there's going to be kids that are going to tell you you're stupid and that you're ugly and that you're this and that and all those things that are not true about you, right? So again, I share this with you because I hope that we can do the same thing. It doesn't even have to be your own kid. You can I mean, children that it might be your friend's kid, it might be a godchild that you have, or whomever it is, making sure you're telling them compliments, sincere things, because kids kids know when you're when you're lying to them. So I'm not saying to pour into them false compliments, but things you see, things you see about them. You're kind, you're good at this, you're good at score, whatever it is. Because again, even though some of them may roll their eyes and those sorts of things, some of those type of positive statements really go to their heart, right? They could really take it in. And in those moments, which they will have, when other people are telling them things that are not even true about them, they may think back on the memory that they had when you said something positive to them. It's just that powerful, right? So I want to encourage you today to make sure you're doing that. Good evening from San Francisco. Welcome, welcome. So as I wrap up here today, if you need me at any time, be sure to reach out, drnekeshiahammond.com. Or you can connect on social media. You can subscribe to my YouTube page, Dr. Nekeshia Hammond, and you can set the alert to get notifications. And the past mental health moments are always on my YouTube page, as I mentioned, if you happen to miss a live YouTube or a live mental health moment. But have an amazing week, you all. Be blessed. Take care of yourselves. And I will see you all next Tuesday live on Black Women Empowered Incorporated Facebook page, YouTube, and LinkedIn Live. So have an amazing week and be sure to take care of the youth in your life. They need you, and be well. Bye, y'all.